So there you are at work one morning, somehow finding yourself Googling cupcake recipes on the internet and considering vanilla or chocolate or the type of frosting that you want to use. And you're scratching your head thinking, how the heck did this happen again? Then you remember your boss coming in a few days ago with the AWS cloud bill in his hand, throwing it down on the table and saying, look at this cloud bill. We're going to need to hold a bake sale to cover all these expenses. Sadly, this is actually a really common story. Not so much the bake sale covering the cost parts of it, but the sticker shock when we get our cloud expenditure bills back. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about how the AWS well-architected framework cost optimization pillar lays out important best practices across 4 key design areas to help keep us on target with our expenditure and that value proposition. For many organizations, the cost optimization problem begins right from day one. Our entire approach to acquiring assets, software, resources was all built around the notion of buying an asset and then owning the asset over time. As we use managed services, the entire cost of ownership and return of investment model shifts in drastic ways that many organizations struggle to embrace. So this is exactly where the cost optimization best practices come in. And the first one is absolutely critical, the consumption model. This one tells us that we need to look for ways to pay for only what we're using. This is a lot like the notion of going on vacation. When you go somewhere for a few days, you don't go and buy an entirely new home there, at least not in most situations. You would go and stay in maybe a rental unit or a hotel, maybe a bed and breakfast, or maybe you'll crash on somebody's couch. The point is, it's a short-lived visit, so you're not going to buy some long-term solution for it. Yet, sadly, this is exactly what lots of organizations have done for many years with their infrastructure. So looking for opportunities to identify where we can switch away from a buy all of it at once model to buying just what we need is going to drive a lot of additional value. For many organizations, they don't know what their current demand really is. They don't have a good way of characterizing it. So it's extremely difficult then for them to plan for capacity. And that leads us beautifully down to the second one, measure efficiency. This is the thermometer, the indicator that tells you what your current demand levels are and how effectively your current capacity is addressing those needs. So if you did buy a server that was too large, it had more power than what the workload required, or if you bought a system that had too much storage, by measuring the efficiency of it, we can identify that potential opportunity to reduce both the size and the provisioning, and of course, reduce the cost for it. Keeping in mind that in many situations, it's not just about the size, but the timing. As you heard me mention a few minutes ago, rather than owning something perpetually all throughout the year, we can use services for brief periods of time. Looking for the timing intervals in which we efficiently use those resources is, again, a key hallmark. Now, when we talk about measuring efficiency, it gets pretty technical pretty fast. How much CPU, how much RAM, how much throughput are we using on particular services? But remember that there's also value metrics that are tied to the business. How effectively is this servicing the customer? How effectively are we reducing errors or problems? How quickly are we able to go from new customer to product shipped out? If we can adjust those timelines through cost optimization or through redefining our resources in some way, then it's all for a win for the organization. So remember that efficiency isn't just about the actual raw resource consumption. It's always more effective when we can tie those measures back to specific business metrics. And speaking of one thing that businesses definitely keep an eye on, that is the operational bottom line and spend for their data center operations. In a lot of situations, we think about buying virtual servers and using virtualized systems in the cloud. And that is certainly a big element of it because now we're leveraging infrastructure that somebody else owns. I don't have to own it all the year. But one key element that's missing in that model is the notion of managed elements. The managing that AWS does is a whole other part of the value proposition. It's not just using their servers, it's also having their teams and their administrators maintain the data centers, maintain the hypervisors and the physical infrastructure and the networks and all the interconnectivity that makes this thing work properly. So that managed services model is the part that directly affects our need to have operations folks internally doing it for us. So anywhere that we can look for opportunities through automation or through resizing or reprovisioning our materials to reduce operational complexity, that's always going to be a big win. And indeed, my last one down here on the bottom points that out perfectly. Reduce that cost of ownership and operational expenditure by using managed services. Anytime that we can choose to use AWS managed products, it will reduce the amount of effort. Keeping in mind that we always have to watch out for maintaining enough control. That is that balancing act that you might have heard me talk about many times before. And along those same lines of measuring and understanding where your optimization benefits exist, The final option on here, analyze and attribute expenditure. A lot of organizations point out that one of their big reasons for going to the cloud is that they're excited about getting a bill. For a long time now, many organizations have really struggled with something called total cost of ownership. Dun, dun, dun. If you've ever been a part of a cost of ownership analysis, it is a massive game of include, exclude, this is this, no, put that one over there, and deciding where specific costs should be attributed back within the organization. In the end, almost every cost of ownership analysis I've ever been privy to, it has at least watered down results or caveats, things that we know to be potentially problematic about it. And let's face it, a lot of organizations are making big decisions based on those impractical cost of ownership analysis. So in the end, many organizations are really stoked about getting a bill that enumerates exactly what their cost of ownership was, with a whole lot less gray area and less fuzziness. Along those lines, keep in mind that AWS provides us important mechanisms such as multi-account model, the ability to tag resources to create specific types of context within our billing information, and then of course granting us detailed cost and usage reports that allow us to go and perform analytics against all of our expenditure information. Collectively, these cost optimization principles steer us towards important decisions that we can make and important evaluation opportunities that we can make during the planning and the operation phases of almost any cloud service out there. The most successful deployments are going to be when you get your developers and your engineering teams involved early on. Designing for expense is one of the best ways to improve the resulting expenditure. I know it sounds like a simple equation, but it is something that we need to bring up here because many companies deploy existing tools and then try to tune them. And of course, this is a semi-effective model, but the more that you can tune from the beginning in the way that we design, the better the ending results are. And hey, if you're not there yet, it's not the end of the world. Put it on the roadmap and set it as an objective to accomplish down the road. It's not really surprising to hear that most consumers of cloud services are concerned about cost. So by following these cost optimization principles, we can help hit those price point targets that we're looking for, drive that value proposition, and free up cost and economic resources to be used elsewhere, supporting the business bottom line. In future lessons, we'll take a look at how AWS applies these cost principles across several key design areas. I hope this has been informative for you. I'd like to thank you for viewing.